Imagine this. You're the most famous scientist alive. Not famous like people recognize you at Walmart. Famous like the Holy Roman Emperor personally invited you to live in his kingdom because he wanted you nearby. Famous like you have your own island. Had your own island. It's complicated. The year is 1601, Prague. You're at a royal banquet and everything is perfect. The food is incredible. The wine is better. You're seated near the emperor himself, which means you've made it. Like, genuinely made it. You mapped the entire night sky with your bare eyes before telescopes existed. You survived a duel at 20. You replaced your nose with metal after someone cut it off, and you just kept going. And right now, in this room, you really need to pee. You've needed to for a while. But here's the thing about royal banquets in 1601. You do not get up before the emperor does. That's not a suggestion, that's the rule. You leave early, you're rude, so you hold it. The emperor keeps eating. More wine, more toasts, more courses. You're nodding, smiling, engaging in stimulating conversation about celestial mechanics, while your bladder is filing a formal complaint with your central nervous system. You hold it for hours. You go home that night barely able to walk. 11 days later, you're dead. Oh, hey there. Before we take a look at the probably weirdest way to die, 2 quick facts before we get into it. Fact 1. Your bladder can physically burst. It's called a bladder rupture. It's exactly what it sounds like and somehow worse. Fact 2. A urinary tract infection can kill you. When bacteria from your urinary tract reach your bloodstream, it stops being a UTI and starts being sepsis. And sepsis doesn't care how famous you are. Alright, let's talk about what actually happens when you hold your bladder as long as humanly possible. Spoiler, I would not recommend doing that. So who are you? Because before we watch you die over a dinner party, we should establish exactly what we're losing here. You're Tycho Brahe, Danish, nobleman, the greatest observational astronomer who ever lived, pre-telescope. Everything you know about the sky, you figured out by looking at it. You've cataloged over 700 stars by hand, tracked planetary motion so accurately that Johannes Kepler will later use your data to prove how planets orbit the sun. Your work will outlive you by centuries. You are not a small person. And then there's the other stuff. At 20, you lost your nose in a duel over a math argument. Not a woman, not money, math. You replaced it with a brass and silver prosthetic and just kept going. You have a pet elk that died last year after getting drunk at a party and falling down a flight of stairs. You have a psychic dwarf named Jep who sits under your dinner table and whispers predictions about guests. This is you, metal nose, dead drunk elk, personal island, psychic dwarf. The most dramatic possible person to die over a bathroom break.
So let's talk about what's actually happening inside you right now.
Because this isn't just an embarrassing story about a man who needed to use the bathroom. This is a precise mechanical failure. Your bladder is essentially a muscular bag. Sits in your pelvis, holds about 400 to 600 milliliters of urine comfortably. When it hits around 300 milliliters, your brain gets a polite notification. Time to go. You can ignore that. People ignore it all the time. When it hits 500, your brain stops being polite. The signal becomes urgent, painful, hard to think about anything else. You ignored that one too, at the royal banquet while discussing celestial mechanics. At full capacity, your bladder wall is stretched thin. The muscle is working constantly just to stay closed. Hold it long enough and a few things can happen. None of them are good. Best case, you develop urinary retention. The muscles that are supposed to release have been clenched so long they forget how to let go. You get home, you try to go, and nothing happens. Or almost nothing. A trickle. Not nearly enough. The pressure keeps building with nowhere to go. Worst case, rupture. The wall gives. Everything inside spills into your abdominal cavity. And here's why that's catastrophic. Urine is not sterile. That's actually a myth. It contains bacteria. Harmless bacteria when they're where they're supposed to be. Catastrophic bacteria the second they're somewhere else. This is sepsis. And sepsis is not an infection. It's your body's response to an infection. Your immune system declares total war. And the problem with total war is that it destroys everything. your own tissue, your own organs. It stops being able to tell the difference between the enemy and you. In 2025, sepsis kills around 270,000 people per year in the United States alone, with antibiotics, with ICUs, with vasopressors and IV fluids, and every tool modern medicine has. It's 1601. You have none of that. Let's look at what happened to you day by day. Because unlike a headshot or an overdose, you don't get the mercy of speed. You get 11 days. Let's go. Night of the banquet. You get home. You try to go to the toilet. Almost nothing happens. There's pain. Low, deep, and wrong. You assume it'll pass. You've survived a sword to the face. You go to sleep. Days 1 and 2. It's not passing. You're feverish. Not dramatically, just that low background heat that tells you something is fighting something inside you. You're still thinking clearly. You're probably still working. Days 3 and 4. The fever climbs. Sepsis is establishing now. The clarity you had 2 days ago is going soft around the edges. You know something is seriously wrong. You haven't crossed the line into knowing you're dying yet. Days 5 through 7. You've crossed the line. Fever spiking and breaking and spiking again. Kidneys struggling. Your heart working harder to compensate, which means you're exhausted in a way sleep doesn't fix. And the confusion, that's the worst part. You are a man whose entire life was built on precision, on measuring things down to a fraction of a degree. And now you can't hold a thought for more than a few seconds. The instrument you spent 54 years sharpening is going soft. Days 8 and 9. Organs failing in sequence. You're not getting out of bed. You're not writing. You're just enduring. Days 10 and 11. You're still conscious. Sepsis doesn't always take your mind at the end. Sometimes it just leaves you there, aware, exhausted beyond anything you knew exhaustion could be, but present. Eventually, your heart stops.
You all are probably wondering what dying from having to pee really hard feels like. Well, the first night is just pain and embarrassment. You've all been there. Road trip, no rest stop for 40 miles. You're doing the math on whether you can make it. Now, multiply that by 4 hours of royal banquet and remove the option of pulling over. That's night 1. Except when you finally get home, nothing comes out. The relief you've been fantasizing about for hours doesn't happen. Just pressure and pain and the horrible realization that something is wrong. The fever days are that specific unreality anyone who's had a bad fever knows. Thoughts that almost make sense, but not quite. Then, the confusion hits. And this is where it gets cruel specifically for you. Because you're not just anyone losing their mind. You're a man who built his whole life around the precision of his thinking. You measured the sky with your eyes, and now you can't hold a thought for more than a few seconds. You reach for an idea and it dissolves. Sepsis survivors consistently describe this as the worst part. Not the pain, not the fever, not being able to trust your own mind. By the final days, the exhaustion has gone so deep, it stops feeling like exhaustion and starts feeling like gravity.